Again, Attorney Steve Vonderen. We are back in this video. We are talking about BitTorrent, this whole thing. I'm trying to give you a general overview of some of the concepts, the issues, some of the things that are going on. So without further ado, let's head to the Attorney Steve copyright whiteboard. Okay, let's back this baby up. Yeah, if we can, if my battery's working here. All right, let's back this up. So there's a lot of stuff on the board. I don't expect you to digest it all. It's there if you want to zoom in on your screen and take a look, and for future reference, just some of the concepts that I have up here. So there's a lot of information, but I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, so you can go back and rewind it if you want to hear it again. But trying to give you a general understanding of what happens when you get that copyright infringement letter from the movie company or the music company or the photography company for file sharing, for sharing files on the internet through one of these BitTorrent clients. Okay, so let's go and talk about some of the basics of this. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff up here, as I mentioned, but usually the way these BitTorrent things work is you have an initial seeder, somebody that's going to be the person that gets that video onto the computer, something that allows it to be uploaded into a torrent site. Okay, what happens is this seeder is going to create something called a torrent file. Okay, this is a file that's going to have the identification, the hash ID number. This is going to tell the receiving party the source and the origin of this file, so that it can put it back together when it gets on this end. Real basically, I have little squares here, and what they are is, in order to do the BitTorrent, which is a protocol, what happens is it breaks your movie. Let's say you have a movie, it breaks it up to hundreds or thousands of little pieces, and little pieces are just sent here and there. So these are just little pieces that you see. So these may be traded. It's a little hard to see, but I have a picture of what I call the swarm. Okay, this is the swarm. This is all the computers hooked together. They're all sharing and transferring files all at once. So it's just going like this. Okay, so this person's trading their pieces. They have pieces. Everybody's got some pieces, and everybody's trading the movies. Once you get all the pieces together, then you're able to watch the final video. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. So you have these little pieces. You have the torrent file here. The torrent file can be emailed. I'm going to check off some of these things to someone. It can be uploaded to a torrent site, and you can find these on a torrent site. So if you go to torrent websites like the Pirate Bay, for example, here's our website. Okay, if you go to a website like the Pirates Bay, you can find different files. Okay, and it'll be here as when this file is made, there'll be the hash ID, the file information. That's your file name. So say you have a movie. Let's say somebody calls it Dallas Buyers Club. You're going to have the name and the length and the size of the movie. That's going to go over here. So then when you're searching on one of these torrent sites, you may find yourself Dallas Buyers Club. You see the torrent file there, the hash, the file information there. And so then you say, well, I'll download that. It's 50 megabytes, I'll download it. Or it's 2 gigabytes, I'll download it. So that gets downloaded by the swarm, and what happens is, to get into the swarm, it's pretty easy. You download a client, and there's lots of different companies that offer what we call these torrent clients that allow you to get into these swarms and share information and data packets and all that, and these little pieces that, once assembled all together, again, then you can watch the movie. So you have to voluntarily download the client. You have to make the decision to go to a site that is listing the videos. You have to press your finger and download. And so, there is some voluntary action going on here. And that's one of the things these source companies, these content providers, they will use against you. Is they say, well, you voluntarily installed that. This is not an accident. You installed the software, and so, you downloaded that movie, and you got all the packets. So you got all the pieces through this peer network, so you're all liable. So what a lot of attorneys do is they sue everybody here in the swarm and say, you're all liable, you're joint and severally liable, you're all responsible for this movie coming together, and so forth and so on. So in the world of torrents, if you're not sharing, if you're not giving up some of your bandwidth, you're not allowed to download as much. So there is this concept of what they call social contract, where you're have this deal where everybody allows their networks to be used, their resources to be used to share, and to allow different people in the peers, different peers as we call them, to share the files. Okay, so this is what we call P2P. This is peer to peer. You see my little people here on their computers, peer to peer to peer to peer to peer, and everybody's doing this. And so that's the essence of these BitTorrent lawsuits. Okay, so again, going back here, you have your hash ID, file name, you have announcements. The announcements tells you about these trackers, okay, and the trackers are here to help basically tell everybody where the different pieces are that they need. Okay, so that's your tracker. So I drew an arrow up into there just for a visual. This would be a sample of what a tracker link would look like. Okay, you see the announce at the end. Okay, so you have the seeders. You have all these different types of movies, music, different things that can be digitalized. Everything, almost everything can be digitalized. Digitized, I should say, if there's not some strong encryption or digital rights management to it. So you have movies like Game of Thrones, Dallas Buyers Club, London Has Fallen, The Avengers, all different kinds of music, songs. You have adult pornography movies, which is big, and this is where a lot of lawsuits come from. FlavaWorks, Malibu Media. Okay, but it's not just movies, it's not just music. It can also be like software, like Microsoft Office software, different products, Excel, Visio, whatnot. It could be Autodesk products or AutoCAD. It could be the Revit software. Okay, so there's different things that you could be downloading. It could be something from Apple, like Final Cut Pro or something. So there's a lot of different things that can be shared, put up into the torrent system here. As you can see, boom, boom. You got the swarm, and they go find it on the torrent sites. Okay, again, some examples. The Pirates Bay, Kick-Ass Torrents. I think I read something recently that they got hammered on something. Extra Torrents. Torrents 133.7x, so forth and so on. You can look those up. But you have those, you have the swarm. So that's the setup. Now, when the lawsuits come, when you get the infringement letter, that's when people go like, what the heck? I was just here watching movies and having a good time and nobody told me. Who said this is illegal? Why is this illegal? Well, I've highlighted in red some of the reasons under the copyright laws that these companies in here, and let me just draw those for you, and I'll talk about those in a second. But they have, copyright holders have specific rights. It's known as a bundle of rights. But the four main rights that are at issue in these BitTorrent cases are the right to reproduce your copyrighted work. That belongs to them and them only, unless they give you a license. And to distribute their copyrighted work. So you can see their work is being distributed through the swarm. It's being reproduced through this process. Put all the pieces back together here, so it's being reproduced. Publicly display right here, and publicly perform. So, that's why if you have a music and music is copyrighted, you can't just get it and go publicly sing, technically you can't sing Happy Birthday. That was a recent case that got settled, is you couldn't go sing Happy Birthday in a restaurant because somebody says, hey, wait, that's my copyright, and you're publicly performing it. So it's a weird thing, but these are usually the four rights that you will see at issue: reproduction, distribution, display, and performance. Okay, so those are the rights that a plaintiff, a copyright holder, may claim that you're infringing on. Now, some common examples of these copyright holders, it could be anyone, and just anyone that has creative works that are copyrighted, and copyright is automatic. We've talked about that in other videos and blogs, okay? But some of the common ones, the BSA, the Business Software Alliance, their copyrighted software, if you're trading it through these networks, using it, downloading it, using crack codes to get in, all these kinds of things, you could have a problem, okay? You have the SIIA, that's another software trade association. You have the Motion Picture Association, MPA, and RIIA, Recording Industry Association. So you have all these different associations. Now, a couple of these, particularly the film and the music, have got together with some of the major internet service providers, and they're the ones that provide you your internet connection, your wireless, so forth. That would be like your Verizon, Comcast, Time Warner, those kinds of things. And they have entered into this, what they call the copyright alert system, which is a way that these big, gigantic industries can work with the internet service providers to try to identify the infringers and send them notices or give them what we call copyright strikes, send them letters, threatening to turn off their service or throttle down their service, those kinds of things. So you have this copyright alert system which was put in place. So in other words, let me put it simply, so you have companies here that have their copyrighted products and they just want to make sure that there's not a wholesale trading of this in the so-called free market, and it's stripping them of their profits. Now people can talk about this and debate this all day long. Oh, they make tons of money, help the little guy, so forth and so on. That's for another day and another topic, and those kinds of things. But anyway, so you get here, this is the basic system. As we went over this, you download the client, you search for the content, you download by use of trackers, and peers become seeders. So peers, the initial seeder, peers end up seeding each other. So, we talked about that. So you have all this covered. A couple other things. Well, let's just start up here. Streaming is also coming into play now. I know BitTorrent is working on an app, if not has an app. Facebook Live has an app, YouTube, live streaming. So again, watching these kinds of movies, these kinds of copyrighted content, live streaming them is a problem. You need to think about this seriously before you or your kids go do that, and you need to be very careful about that, okay? Also some other things, people talk about peer blockers. Well, if you just use a peer blocker, then nobody's going to know. Peer blockers, they may work, they may help by blocking some of the, what they call the anti-P2P organizations or the anti-infringement companies that don't want you here. But the problem is, as I show down here, is if somebody wants to go anonymous and create their own account, you probably wouldn't know about it, and you end up trading with them and trading files with them, and bingo, now they've got you, okay? So I'm not real big on those. A lot of people talk about the VPNs, virtual private network. Those will cloak your communications. However, that may sacrifice speed. That's going to cost you money, and those things can also fail. They're not foolproof, okay? What else? You have you can check your torrent settings, or maybe a way to add some privacy features in your torrent clients. And I have some of your torrent clients up here. uTorrent is a big one, BitTorrent, Vuze is a big one, BitTornado, those kinds of things, okay? So now something interesting I read is that these torrents, the traffic created by the torrents, this is something I read, could be true, could be false, takes up about 1/4 of the internet traffic is just trading these big files and chopping them into little pieces and trading it like on this, this digital network. So that's 1/4 of the traffic of the internet. So that's quite significant. So that is just kind of an overview. Now let's go to, well, what do you do? Let's go to, well, how might they find out about you? That's another question we get. Well, like I said, if you wanted to get a company to get an anonymous peer in there, so somebody with one of these companies says, hey, it would be neat to have our own little secret agent in there, an anonymous user, they could set up an account. There's a real nice file on the internet that I'll show you. Or I'll put a link on my website, copyrightbully.com. For more information, we have tons of resources at copyrightbully.com. But an anonymous person can easily go in through their client and take screenshots of the traffic in a particular file. So you may see Dallas Buyers Club, you see the title, you see the IP address of this person, you see their browser, may see their ISP, you may see the port number, all these different things. So, and what you'll also see, as I wrote down here, is that's what they call the Digital Handshake. When these files are transferred, you'll see something on there usually that says handshake completed. Well, that suggests that you got your files and that you're able to watch the movie. Okay, you may also see connection closed. You may also see timed out. Now that may mean maybe you didn't get the files. Maybe you got 1 or 2 of these pieces, but you didn't get them all, so you were not able to put together a full movie. and maybe you never got the movie. So that's something to consider. But an anonymous user would probably get around the use of the peer blockers anyway. If you were able to keep them out with your VPN, that may be a solution. That's one you see everybody talking about on the internet, but what happens if that fails? So anyway, so you have the potential to monitor. This could be the company, this could be a third party that's hired specifically to set up special little servers in here to take part in all this and collect evidence. And then you end up seeing these guys in court with their declarations and stuff. We're digital forensics experts, and we noticed that these IP addresses are attached here. They're downloading London Has Fallen, and they've got the movie and they're sharing it with everyone. The whole swarm is liable. That's what you could see. Okay, so that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of the basics of how they might find you. What happens then when they do find you? They say, well, all we really have by our investigation system here is the date, time, IP, the name of the torrent, the time that they downloaded it, but we don't know who they are. We don't have their identity. So the way it works is these companies or other rights holders will contact their intellectual property lawyers, and they will file a lawsuit. They may name this whole swarm under what we call a joinder. They just join all the parties and say, you're all liable. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Everybody's liable here. All these IP addresses that we put together on this movie, this hashtag, this file number, they may have their own special codes inserted on the movies, so they're matching these up. They may sue everybody, but still they don't know your name. So they will sue as does, D-O-E, Jane or John Doe. They may sue, it may be Malibu Media versus Doe's 1 through 100. They may think there's 100 people. They may think there's 20 people based on their information. So this is how they go about filing these suits. Now, they go to the ISP. Well, first of all, they file the suit. Then they ask the federal court judge for expedited discovery so they can get right to discovery, because normally you have to wait in federal court. But what they do is they say, Judge, we don't know who these defendants are. We need to know. We need to find out. Will you let us engage in discovery? Yes, fine, go ahead. And then they send subpoenas to the ISP. Okay, so the ISP then gets the subpoena and says, okay, this is for subscriber IP address 29.25.4.832, whatever. And they go, oh, we know who that is. That's Phil Morris over here. So Phil Morris, we're going to send him a letter informing the subscriber that we received a subpoena and that we need to, that you have, basically a certain amount of time to either file a motion to quash, a motion for a protective order, or do something to protect your privacy. Sometimes they will require the actual court filings to see that you actually did file something. Otherwise, they're going to send the defendant, or the plaintiffs, they're going to send them your information, name, address, email, phone, whatever else, depending. Look at the subpoena, it'll tell you what they're looking for. So you get the letter and now you're like, oh my God, what do I do? Well, that's when you can call us. We can help walk you through potential defenses. We can help, give you an idea of what you may be able to settle for. We can give you the whole big picture here, okay? So that's just the nuts and bolts of the lawsuit process. You got that. So that leaves us really down to one thing. We've been through over all this here is defenses, potential defenses. So I want to wrap this up. This is going to be very general, but just to give you an idea of some of the defenses you might raise. One, fair use. Fair use. Now, again, this is not to say any of these defenses are 100% foolproof, that don't trust me, they're going to work. These are things you raise, you try to prove. They may work, they may not work, but you're looking for something. In these kinds of cases where somebody may be demanding thousands and thousands of dollars, maybe up to $150,000 for willful copyright infringement, you may be looking at very high figures. So you need to come up with something. So you may have a fair use. You may say the entire file was not downloaded. You may try to argue this was used for non-commercial purposes. This was for research, scholarly. Trust me, you look at what you can. We have information about fair use on our website if you want to check that out, copyrightbully.com. Incorrect ID, we've had this as well, where we will get notice that we have the IP address, your Comcast has identified the subscriber, here's our settlement offer, and I say, well, this isn't my guy at all. Where did you get this? So they have mixed up IP addresses. Certainly if you didn't download the video, why should you have to pay for it, right? So, that's something, IP addresses can be reassigned and changed to different people, right? Consent, if you have a license, that would be another one. If you have a license to use one of these movies or download the software or something, you have a legitimate reason. That's probably not going to pop up much, but you may have something where you have some sort of implied consent where, let's say these companies are sitting down here monitoring you, and they're just allowing you to just rack it up and just share movies more, so they can get a nice big long list of movies that you shared. And again, I'm not saying this is going to work, but I mean, it's something to think about. They're sort of just allowing you, without sending a DMCA takedown notice or anything like that to the ISP, just allowing you to continue to download and share away, So it's just, like I said, some arguments you can look at. Maybe it applies to your case. Again, just some ideas. We're brainstorming here, okay? If the work was in the public domain, for example, if it was published before 1923, maybe you have an old black and white film of some sort that is in the public domain. You say, yeah, I shared it, but it's public domain. Okay, let's get real. So that would be a defense. Let's say you have an unsecured Wi-Fi. If you get your wireless access and it's unsecured, theoretically somebody else could be in there using your bandwidth, downloading away, and so it's not you. So even though your IP address would be detected, you're not the downloader, wrong person, okay? So that would be another one. Here's some creative ones that I point out, sometimes in these adult pornography cases, and again, I'm not saying this is going to work, but things to be thinking about if you find yourself in a bitter battle with a copyright bully is, copyright attaches, the purpose of copyright under the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 that copyright is to promote the progress of the sciences and the useful arts, and to secure for a limited time to authors and inventors the rights to their work. So, somewhere in there, I'm not hearing pornography company, but they are making movies, they are making creative movies. Now, one of the, and I'm just, like I said, we're just throwing ideas around, but, to me, sometimes a pornography, I would say, is, it's two people engaging in sexual intercourse, and to me, that's not like the most creative thing that, that you could think of as far as like a movie, like a Steven Spielberg movie or something, or a Paul McCartney song or something. Just not quite, to me, the same level of creativity. So, but I'm not suggesting that they wouldn't have copyright protection. But if it's not copyrightable, these are arguments that I have seen out there. Obscenity is another one. Some people have tried this. It hasn't really worked, just to let you know. But if something is obscene, per the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, obscenity can be regulated. Obscenity can be outlawed. But under the copyright laws, obscenity is apparently, by most prevailing courts in the federal court system, it's acceptable. So, but then you get to a question of whether or not other laws may be broken, like distributing obscene material. So there's other things that you can look at in the case where it's, do or die, and you just find yourself in the battle of your life. So something to think about is meeting the requirements. Is the work actually copyrightable? Is the work actually copyrightable? Unclean hands, this is what I just talked about. If you have a plaintiff, a copyright holder that's breaking other laws, violating other, doing dubious things, and you'll know in your particular case, you say, wow, that's shocking. You can try an unclean hands, which is more of an equitable defense, where you tell the court to exercise its discretion, its equitable discretion. And again, trust me, not a lot of cases are won on the unclean hands doctrine, but when you're in that tough case, it's something in your toolbox, okay? Again, total accident. Now, this is what I said. Now, total accident, there is such a thing as innocent infringement, and it's still infringement nevertheless, but, the penalties could be drastically reduced. So, I will tell you, on one of the sites I went to, I was just researching, I think it was uTorrent. I was researching it, and I saw it said uTorrent download, and I clicked on the link, just because I wanted to see what page that would take me to. And it looked like it's, again, I can't confirm this, but it looked like it started downloading the client. I was not trying to download the client. So, if the client downloads, maybe, maybe somebody's playing around with it one day, or you're goofing around on the couch and you just try to download a video, next thing you know, the swarm hits you, So all I'm saying is these are things to potentially look at in a case, okay? So that's our basic overview of the big world of torrent lawsuits, BitTorrent defense, file sharing, P2P, all these different things you'll hear it called. So, but if you need help, if you need a lawyer on your side, copyright attorney, we help both plaintiffs and defendants, arbitration, mediation, litigation, and if you need some help just negotiating out a case, software audits, we can help you there as well. So hope this has been helpful. Again, if you want good resources, go to our copyrightbully.com website. If you like this video, give me some clicks here and there. If you got some ideas, some things I'm missing, please, by all means, share the information for the rest of the world. Let's, like I said, knowledge is power. Let's work this out together, okay? Other than that, be careful when you're downloading. Parents could potentially be held liable, so you do have to be careful in this area, okay? Hope this has been helpful. Thanks a lot. Feel free to share this video on your social media networks. Take care.